Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy roundtable, fantasy roundtable, yeah. Fantasy roundtable, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy roundtable, fantasy roundtable, woo. Fantasy roundtable, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Monday, the day after Christmas. We had to wait a little bit of time, but Broncos fans got a present this morning, which we will get to a little bit later. They certainly didn't get a present if, like me, they finally got to watch a football game yesterday and had to watch that Travis Shamockery. But we still have one game left in what has been a wild Week 16 as teams jockey for playoff positions. If you're still alive in your fantasy semifinal, we will wish you good luck, and we will take a look at what may have transpired. But Dennis, how was Christmas weekend for you?
It was cold, filled with family. It was a overall good time. I did not get to watch as much football as I wanted, but I mean, it was Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and I got to be honest, I like sleeping indoors, and so I thought if sacrificing a little bit of football to keep the wife happy was a good way to go.
Well, I was at work for 14 or 15, I lost count, hours on Christmas Eve, so I didn't see any of those games. I did finally make it home on Christmas Day, to be able to see the Broncos, which happened. But then as you said, I also made it home in time to watch the night game, which was also an interesting game. I will let you know how my wife helped with that when we get to that in a minute. But a game I did see also before Christmas, way back on Thursday night, was the Jacksonville Jaguars at the New York Jets. If you guys remember, we did the full Week 16 preview on Thursday afternoon. So we're going to recap all of the action that we've seen so far. It was a game that had big playoff implications for both teams, but apparently only the Jaguars offense was aware of that. They managed to get the win 19-3 over the Jets. Dennis, there was a lot of talk yesterday that the Jaguars are peaking at the right time and could be a dangerous team for anyone to face in the playoffs. How do you feel about that?
I don't think they have a super high ceiling this year. I think they're a year early. Travis Etienne's playing well. Trevor Lawrence is playing well. Etienne's had a nice last couple of weeks. And Evan Ingram has been a monster. If you've had him at the tight end spot as you have tried to navigate the playoffs, he's definitely been helping you along the way. But, they played good against a Jets defense that we know is good. And to be able to put up 19 points. Well, Etienne, not a super efficient day, but 83 yards on the ground, 29 yards in the air. Ingram had the monster day, 7 for 8 for 113. Christian Kirk, while not super productive, he only caught 3 for 22. He did lead the wide receivers in targets, and that's what you want to see from him. And it makes sense. He's playing out of the slot more so than Marvin and Zay Jones are. And the Jets defensive backs, DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, are typically on the outside. So it would make sense that both Kirk and Ingram would be more successful than the two outside wide receivers. I mean, Marvin Jones also caught 3 passes, but only for 15 yards. Zay caught 1 for 14. If you were leaning on Zay and hoping against hope that he was going to be able to bounce up against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, to quote Mr. T, I pity the fool.
The Jets' defense has never been their problem. The offense, though, not quite as good. Mike White looks like he will be back for Week 17, but it was Zach Wilson. I thought he looked better in Week 15, but Thursday night he looked lost at times, finished 9 of 18, threw an interception. The interception was kind of a YOLO ball at the end of the first half, if we're being honest. A lot of bad energy in the crowd in New York, a lot of boos. They end up pulling him out for Strevler. Now the word has come that Wilson will be inactive going forward. Is his time done with the Jets?
I think so. He's only his second year into his contract, so there's 2 years left. It is a rookie contract, so it isn't quite the albatross that a quarterback contract could be. The Jets are certainly not in the same situation with Wilson that the Broncos are with Wilson. But
not a good year to be named Wilson and being a starting quarterback.
I do think he's done as a Jet, but he's battled injuries. The team hasn't been great, and it's just I think he needs a fresh start, and that's going to be somewhere else. The question comes now, is it a Tua Tagovailoa type of return? Tua struggled for a couple years in Miami. Brian Flores, by all accounts, did not seem to be like that Tua was his guy, and that didn't work out, and Flores is gone. But getting a coach that said, hey, here, I know what you can do. Here are the things I believe you can do, and building an offense around that. I think the opportunity is going to be somewhere between Tua with McDaniel and Josh Rosen. So somewhere along that spectrum, he's going to get another opportunity. I don't know what the trade value is for him. Is somebody going to give up a conditional 6th-round pick or something to make sure they don't have to go, spend a waiver claim, or they don't have to battle against other teams trying to sign him as a free agent? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. But, coaches are egomaniacs, and there's a coach out there right now that's going, I can fix this kid.
One of the interesting scenarios, I can't remember, might have even been Matt and I were talking about, is you look at a team like Arizona where Kyler Murray is there, but he's got an injury, and we know yesterday at the Sunday night game, them talking about him being ready to go at the beginning of October made me laugh pretty hard because he tore his ACL in December, and he's a mover. I doubt, But they were also talking about that team possibly being in a point in time where they let some veterans go, trying to turn over the cap and look at what they can do. That might almost be a situation for Wilson. I feel like he needs to go somewhere. Like Baker has benefited from having a better coach, but I also think he's benefiting a little bit with the Rams from having zero expectations, because the Rams are kind of out of it. Nobody expected him to do a lot going there. Sometimes I think those kind of things might help perk up a quarterback a little bit, giving them a second chance and putting them in a place where they don't have expectations. It didn't help for Josh Rosen, but it helps for some other guys.
Right.
On to another game. The Buffalo Bills go into Chicago and get the 35-13 win. It wasn't necessarily the kind of blowout that it sounds by the final score. This one was a little bit closer for a while. Josh Allen throwing a few turnovers, but the running game really got it going. And that brings me to Devin Singletary. Singletary had himself a pretty good day, 12 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Of course, Cook had 99 yards and a touchdown on 11 carries, so he had a pretty good day as well. But Singletary, we've talked about before, has never quite seized definitively the starting role there in Buffalo. They drafted Cook and have him hanging around. Singletary, another one of these running backs coming to the end of a rookie contract. What do you think his long-term future is?
I think he's playing his way back into Buffalo, considering keeping him around.
They did move Moss.
Well, but they brought in Hines, and it felt to me like Hines was kind of the replacement number 2, and going to be the new heir apparent. But Singletary has played really well. He's good, not great. He is. I don't want to use the word explosive, but he's not pedestrian by any stretch of the imagination. I think, the biggest knock on him is that he's a little bit of an inside runner that's 5'8" and 203 pounds. And that just isn't quite big enough to, carry a heavy load. If he was 5'8" and 220, a rocked up bowling ball of a guy like Michael Pittman used to be, or something like that, then maybe it's a different story. But he's a good receiver. He's not quite as dynamic a receiver as James Cook, but he's a good receiver. I've spent most of the season thinking, they're going to let him walk. He's going to go somewhere else. They're bringing in somebody to replace him. And that's kind of what it is. But the way he's been playing more and more, I'm thinking, maybe he's playing his way on to staying there. And when you have a team that's competing for titles, that's in the top tier of NFL teams, you'll get guys that go, maybe I could make a little more money somewhere else, but I've got a shot to win a Super Bowl ring here with, 75% of the role I might be able to get somewhere else, percent of the money I might be able to get somewhere else. And, Buffalo, from all appearances, has a phenomenal culture, both on and off the field. And it would seem that, we saw the clip of Josh Jacobs talking like he had one foot out the door already. You don't hear any of that stuff with the free agents in Buffalo.
Well, to be fair, Josh Jacobs probably not super pumped that his coach had no faith in him before he'd even seen him play. On the flip side, the Chicago Bears have a lot of issues and a lot of things looking to build around. But one of the young pieces you'd think they'd be able to build around is Cole Kmet, who a lot of people thought was probably the best tight end the year he came out, which whether that's saying much or not, you never know. He's in year 3 right now. What do you think of Kmet as a piece to build around with Justin Fields?
He's providing that safety blanket right now. He's a good athlete, but he's the guy that is sort of, they've lost Claypool, they've lost Mooney, they let Robinson walk in the offseason, and it seems like they're the lowest volume passing team in the league. And unless Malik Willis gets named the starter in Tennessee moving forward, even if Tannehill's healthy, I don't think anybody's going to really compete for that title. That being said, he's very touchdown dependent. He's a 4 or 5 catch guy, 4, 5, 6 target guy per game. So he's 20 to 40 yards. He hasn't shown any real run after the catch explosiveness. He's a guy that's in that monstrous second tier of tight ends that on any given week he could be tight end 24, he could be tight end 9, and it all comes down to does he get in the end zone. I'm reticent to buy into him and start to go make him a guy I want to seek out this offseason, because they're going to get Mooney back next year. They're going to get Chase Claypool back. They're getting better overall as an offense, and they're going to add some more weapons. And you've still got Justin Fields, who is going to run the ball a significant amount. Montgomery is a free agent, but they got Khalil Herbert, whom we've seen be a very explosive back. They've got Tristan Ebner, who they like. So they'll probably bring in a veteran as well. And they're going to add more to that wide receiver core. So while I like Kmet, he's not a guy that I'm really looking for as a piece to support a title run. If I have him, I'm hoping somebody else believes he is, and I can move him in a package deal. You're muted.
I agree. It'll be interesting to see what else the Chicago Bears do to add this season. Hello back, Timmy. On to the next game. The Cleveland Browns hosted the New Orleans Saints, and Saints got the 17-10 win. I actually picked that as my upset special for the week, so I'm glad that panned out for me, even though the Saints apparently had no wide receivers. But in addition to having no wide receivers, they have a healthy Jameis Winston, who they have just decided not to put back and play. I think there's been a lot of questions about Winston this offseason. Do you think he stays in New Orleans? Do you think he goes anywhere or has any kind of value?
What does he feel? I don't think he stays if Dennis Allen is the head coach, because I think he's like, I've watched the NFL for my entire life, and I look back over the course of history, and the general rule is you don't lose your starting job to an injury. And Dennis Allen was like, F that. I'm going to play the Red Rocket, the Red Rifle. And so I'm sure he's not happy with that. I'm sure he thinks that he still can play and has a lot to offer. So I think he's going to go somewhere where he has a shot to compete and earn the starting job. There's several teams outside of New Orleans that are going to be looking for a starting quarterback. Houston, potentially Las Vegas, potentially the Buccaneers, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Washington. So there's going to be opportunities for veterans to go in and compete. We talk about the rookie class coming in, and there really is only 2 or 3 at the top of the draft class that I think are going to get shots to start right out of the gate. And then the guys that are out of the 2022 rookie class, I don't know, Ritter played better this week, but I don't know what kind of shot he's going to get next year. We haven't seen anything from Corral because of an injury. Bailey Zappi is behind Mac Jones. Sam Howell can't see the light of day in Washington. So I'm not sure any of them are going to be standing up and taking jobs. So
the ones we have seen haven't been impressive. So
yeah, and so I do think Winston is going to get a shot somewhere. The way Jahan Dotson plays the deep ball, man, I kind of would love to see Jameis go to Washington. They've got Robinson and Gibson. They've got Dotson, McLaurin.
So there were a lot of people that were interested in seeing him go to Washington before he went back to New Orleans. I just don't know if Ron Rivera wants that kind of a player, but I guess we don't know what Ron Rivera wants. He doesn't know what he wants. On the flip side, the Browns lose, now 6-9, are officially out of it. They have 2 more games left. Both of them are on the road at Washington, which is going to be scrapping for a playoff spot, and then at the Steelers, not only a division opponent, but also a team that could be scrapping for a playoff spot. What do you want to see out of Cleveland to end this season?
Well, I want to see them not phone it in, not give up. There's talk about it may be the end of the road for Stefanski. I'm not sure if I buy that. Yes, there's questions about decisions that he's made. Grossly underusing Nick Chubb being probably my biggest bitch about his tenure. But Watson, he's, it's going to take him a little time to shake off the rust. I don't think, 2 or 3 games is something that after being out for almost 2 full years is really the way to go. He was under 50% on his pass attempts this week for barely over 100 yards. I know the weather was kind of shitty, but and Dalton on the other side didn't break 100 yards. So I guess comparing that. But he did, 10 targets to Amari Cooper, who converted 6 for 72. Njoku had 5 targets. Donovan Peoples-Jones had 5 targets. They just didn't convert a lot of their opportunities in the passing game yesterday. So I want them to go out there and play hard. The interesting thing is going to be that, they benched Myles Garrett for the first series for something team related that we don't know about. And whatever that is, like, I get it, nobody is above the law kind of approach, but Garrett is, is that going to create issues amongst the players going forward?
Yeah, a lot of talk has been about Russell Wilson and his massive deal and what they've gotten. Cleveland knew that they were going to see a long suspension for Watson, but I have not been incredibly impressed by what I've seen. You would like to see, as he's playing in games, 5 and 6, I think if you're a Cleveland fan, at least a little bit of consistency and some signs that they're picking something back up to give you hope going into next year. But we will see. Washington, you can throw on Washington's defense, as we saw Brock Purdy do. Pittsburgh's defense is going to be a decent test, though, because they have really good pass rushers too.
Yeah, it wasn't a great situation to be throwing the ball in this weekend, to be fair to.
Well, but I mean, that's the other question. You have a guy that played his career in Houston in a dome, now going to what the opposite of that would be, out in the open air in Cleveland. So interesting challenge. On to Kansas City, where the Chiefs won 24-10 over the Seahawks. Wasn't as exciting a game as maybe we thought it might be. Seahawks lose again. They are now 7-8. Dennis, they have home games to close the season, but against the Jets, who have a pretty stout defense, and against the Rams, who are really starting to come on. Are the Seahawks done in terms of the playoffs in your mind?
I think they need to win out if they're going to get in the playoffs. But I think also they need Tyler Lockett. With Lockett being out, what was it? Metcalf 7 for 9 for 81 yards. I think Lockett just brings a different skill set that's very complementary to what Metcalf does, and he has the explosiveness to get in the end zone and beat guys. I mean, what was it? Laquan Treadwell, who was just activated, was second on the team in targets. And I don't think that's good for anybody. Kenny Walker had a great game, 26 for 107.
Good for Treadwell's agent.
What's that?
It was good for Treadwell's agent.
Yeah, very good for his agent. But they just, they're going to have to win out, I think, if they want to push for a playoff spot.
On the flip side, for the Chiefs, we saw Juju Smith-Schuster take a 1-year deal there this offseason. He's had his moments, but it hasn't been consistent. What do you feel like the market is going to be for him at the end of the year? Do you think there's a chance he stays with Kansas City?
Yeah, I think there's a chance, but he's going to be, he's at that stage where, for whatever reason, he doesn't get the respect of a guy who put up the numbers he did in his first couple of seasons. I don't know if, then everybody looks at the knee, and as they're looking at it like, that's a ticking time bomb. And so they don't want to invest big money or long years. So they're avoiding it. But I think he's going to go somewhere on a wide receiver needy team. There's going to be a few of them out there, and he may end up needing an injury to be fantasy relevant on a regular basis. But he's a possession receiver. He's a close to the yardage line slot guy. He doesn't quite have the quicks of somebody like Hunter Renfrow or something, but he's not an outside receiver, even though he has decent size. I think that trying to wherever he goes, trying to figure him out is going to be like playing whack-a-mole. I think we've seen it this year. He's going to have some games where he just puts up great numbers, and other games where he just disappears. And I think that's the rest of his career in a season right now.
On to one of the better games of the day, where the New York Giants traveled to play the Vikings and came up just short in a 27-24 loss. Despite that, Dennis, we talked about the Giants needing receivers. Matt has loved Isaiah Hodgins since he came out, and he has kind of picked it up, given a chance here in New York. Had 8 for 89 and a touchdown in this one. What do you think of Hodges, and do you think there's any chance he could become a thing going into next year?
I think he's kind of turning into what they paid $20 million more a year for Kenny Golladay to be.
Kenny.
So, but he's under contract through next season, and it's really affordable. And if he keeps playing like he is, I think they'll extend him next year. He looked to me, he and Adam Thielen, where he comes on and just keeps getting better. He started off, as a practice squad guy and special teams and worked his way up. And now he's got an opportunity, and he's just going to keep getting better. Would that surprise me a bit? Not at all. And he's on a team right now that needs wide receiver help. They need wide receivers that they can count on game after game, season after season. And so what he's been putting on tape this year, I think he's going to get that going forward. Now, if they start bringing in a bunch of high-profile free agents and whatnot, all bets are off there. But I think he's going to get an opportunity to be the wide receiver, too, at worst, in New York. When Wan'Dale Robinson gets back, Hodgins profiles more classically with his body type as a wide receiver one. But it could end up being Robinson in the slot, Hodgins on one side, and then they go out and try to either through the draft or through free agency get a legitimate wide receiver one for the other outside receiver.
On the flip side, the Vikings got the win, and they're a 12-win team, so we don't want to discount them. But they have struggled all season defending the pass. We had talked about the Giants not having much of a passing game going into the week, and yet Daniel Jones able to hang 334 yards on them. Is the pass defense situation a worrying sign if you were trying to pull for a Vikings Super Bowl berth?
I mean, Jones put 334 up, but he only got in the end zone one time. So when it counted, they were able to step up. James had 90 yards, Hodgins 89, Slayton 79. So he only completed passes to 5 different people. So it wasn't like he was throwing even though he threw 42 passes, he wasn't just peppering everybody with targets. That being said, you got to step up and make plays when it's time. And the Vikings were able to play well enough to get the win.
Yeah. On to our next contest. The Cincinnati Bengals hold on for the 22-18 win over the New England Patriots. Dennis, we've seen for a couple of weeks now Trenton Irwin appearing, caught a touchdown again this week. What do you think of Trenton Irwin?
Cool story, bro. He's your classic.
Talk about not helping anyone.
He's your classic wide receiver 4 or 5 special teamer that in a pinch gets some playing time and does what he's supposed to, which is make a play. And so I'm happy for him. I don't think he's going to make my top 300 when it comes to putting together a draft board, unless they decide they're going to ship off Tyler Boyd and not draft anybody else. Then maybe you go, okay. I mean, he's got good size. I think he's like 6'2", 207. He's a good size guy, but he's your classic wide receiver. He's Noah Brown. And so, I mean,
except for all he does is catch touchdowns. Because I forgot.
But Noah Brown will do that, where he has these 40 target seasons and pulls out 3 or 4 touchdowns. he's got the size to be effective in the blocking game. I'm not trying to acquire him. He's not my breakout sleeper or anything like that.
Remember back when Chase got hurt and everybody thought Tyler Boyd was going to be a league winner? That did not pan out. On the flip side, we've talked about the Patriots and their up and down offense all year. They seem to have something good going with Stevenson, although it wasn't that good on Sunday. 7-8, probably a little bit of a long shot to make the playoffs this year. But what do you think the Patriots need to do to fix their offensive identity?
They need a wide receiver that can be counted on. They need a Stephon Diggs, a Devontae Adams. They need a go-to. Jacoby Myers is a fantastic wide receiver, too, who can have a wide receiver one day. Kendrick Bourne, for whatever reason, has always been a wide receiver 3-4 kind of guy. He put up 6 for 100 and a touchdown yesterday, and he'll come out of nowhere with games like that. But they need a T. Higgins. They need somebody that is going to be that legitimate alpha that Mac knows he can count on. And then they can kind of, because they've got Hunter Henry at tight end, who's pretty good. They've got Stevenson. They've got Jacoby Myers.
If they ever use Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, my God.
Yeah, they need to settle on one of them. But they've got Tyquan Thornton to take the top off with his speed. So they've got these other ancillary pieces. They need to get a legitimate alpha wide receiver one, and then they just need to keep Mac clean. Mac isn't a runner. He's not gonna, he isn't gonna break out of the pocket and do stuff off plan like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. They need to give him a great pocket to work from. Let him make good decisions within his skill set. He doesn't have a rocket arm. He's got a good arm, but he doesn't have a rocket arm. He isn't going to throw the ball through a heavy wind. I think we saw that last year when they played against Buffalo and they only threw the ball 3 times. I think they've got a fairly clear assessment of what Matt can do. I got to be honest, as I sit here and listen to the rumors, the thought of Bill O'Brien going back there as the offensive coordinator, I'm like, God dang, thank you so much. I mean,
yeah, they could use
that's something. Such an upgrade over their current situation. It ain't even funny.
On to Carolina, which was probably the most depressing game of the week for both of us. The Panthers get the 37-23 win over your Lions. Dennis, the Lions were red hot. Take a little bit of a stumble here. They close at home against Chicago and then on the road against Green Bay. What does Saturday's loss mean to their playoff hopes?
After last week, I was really surprised the way the defense played, and to give up the amount of rushing yards that they did, it was a mess. I think the defense is going to need to bounce back, and if Detroit wants to make the playoffs, they're going to have to win out. They're going to have to beat Green Bay to keep Green Bay at bay. So it was, but then again, I mean, Goff put up 355 and 3 on the road, which is a phenomenal thing.
I know, he looked so good.
But man, Goff was also their leading rusher with 15 yards.
Well, this felt very early season Detroit, where their offense was putting up points and looked good, but their defense was also allowing the most amount of points. I feel like, and you're right, during that 6-1 streak, they had sort of fixed the defense, but not on Sunday. Deonta Foreman was just, every time he ran, he had one finger out that said, "This one's for you, Fox," because I complained about Foreman not doing anything for me the last 2 weeks. On the flip side, the Panthers, we thought if ever there was a team that was aiming for a top draft pick to get a franchise quarterback, it was Carolina. And somehow They have a very winnable game against the Buccaneers and then the Saints to close out, and may actually have the best chance to control their own destiny and get in the playoffs. Is that a good thing for them?
From a draft pick situation, clearly no. But also, I don't think they're going to be. It feels like Hendon Hooker is probably the best quarterback they're going to have a shot at getting. I feel like Stroud and Bryce Young and probably Will Levis are all going to be gone by the time they pick. But, I mean, Sam Darnold was efficient with low volume, 15 for 22, 250 and 1. Got the ball to DJ Moore, got the ball to Moore in the end zone. And then the running game just was crushing the Lions. So, I don't know. I guess Deontay Foreman was trying to make up for screwing me in week 4 of the SFB playoffs. And I just got to say, it was too little and too late.
Yeah, he screwed you in another way. The big question I have for you, I know you've been a fan of Steve Wilks and seen him get another chance. If Carolina does end up getting into the playoffs, does he get the job?
Well, I think you're using the term fan loosely.
Well,
I feel like he's earning the opportunity to be a legitimate candidate. And given who else is out there, I felt like he wasn't in a great situation in Arizona where he was one and done. I don't know what the coaching staff will look like around him if he does get the job. So there's definitely some questions there. I think he's going to be, right now, is the way they're playing, he's as good a candidate as anybody else out there.
If they do want to bottom out for that franchise quarterback, though, Nathaniel Hackett is available.
It's I like to see guys who do the right thing and are able to motivate their players in just complete shit situations. I think those guys deserve a shot in that. So whether it's somewhere else or whether it's in Carolina, I think Steve Wilks is putting a lot of good stuff out there.
On to Baltimore, where the Ravens still didn't have Lamar Jackson, but they did manage to get the 17-9 win over the Falcons. Desmond Ridder, in his second start, got over 100 yards. He got to 218 on 22 of 33, but the team did not score any touchdowns and falls short once again. What do you think of Ridder so far as a starter?
I mean, from where he was last week to what he did this week, phenomenal improvement. I mean, he played a lot better. He's doing mission number 1, get the ball to Drake London, 9 targets, 7 catches. I'd love to see him have Pitts out there too. It seems like, his second receiver was Olamide Zaccheaus with 7 targets, and he caught 4 of them, only for 18 yards, but he did catch 4. He had, 5 targets with 3 catches to the tight ends combined. I feel like it'll be more volume to Kyle Pitts when he gets back than what these other tight ends are getting. But with 33 pass attempts, he completed 2/3 of his passes, broke 200 yards. While he didn't get in the end zone, based on the draft capital that this quarterback class had, you want him, you need him to be able to come out there now at this point in the season and just sort of build on his previous outings. So week number 1, he was out there, wasn't great, but I'm sure no matter how much you prepare, you're not out there until you're out there. So he got out there, he made it through game 1, he went into game 2, improved dramatically on what was out there. We'll see what the teams throw at him next week and see, does he regress? Does he take another step forward? He's got some opportunities to put some stuff on tape here to show Arthur Smith, hey, I deserve a shot at the job next year. But as long as he's completing 67% of his passes, I think he's going to get an opportunity.
On the flip side, I mentioned the Ravens got the win. Also, curiously, this week, both Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley got enough votes to be alternate quarterbacks for the AFC Pro Bowl team. Explain the Tyler Huntley love to me.
I mean, somebody's got to be, right?
I mean, but he did it by votes. This isn't a, hey, we've been so impressed by your playing. I know he's like fourth alternate, fine. But I thought that was a little shocking.
The Pro Bowl, is nothing more than a contract-based incentive beauty contest. And, if you're really smart out there, you're lobbying, you've got somebody building Twitter bots, voting for you, whatever it takes. Baltimore fans, I think, based on what he did last year and what he did this year, coming in for an injured Lamar Jackson, I think Baltimore fans are like, yeah, we think this guy deserves it. And the players vote, and frankly, nobody wants to be there. I mean, hell, it's a flag football game this year now.
I'm excited, though. It's the Manning brothers. And by coming in and doing so much for the franchise, are you talking about his 1-8 record over the last 2 years in replacing?
That's it.
On to Tennessee, which was, I guess, by the legal definition, a game. The Texans get the surprising 19-14 win. Dennis, is there any more confounding team in the NFL than the Houston Texans?
They're playing hard. And I noticed I'm saying a lot today.
That was what Santa gave you for Christmas, was a new catchphrase.
I guess. They're playing hard for Lovie Smith. I do think they miss Dameon Pierce a lot. And, Mills played 52 snaps, 78%. Driscoll played 19 snaps. That's ridiculous stuff.
I mean, you had Jeff Driscoll and Royce Freeman out there for a while for a team that won a game in December.
Right. So, I mean, that probably says more about Tennessee and Willis than it does about Houston.
Yeah.
They're a game up on Chicago for the 101. So
they absolutely should not be trying to win, though.
They should not be trying to win, but you got to play hard. You got to keep your guys motivated. And
Davis Mills should be playing his ass off because he doesn't want that number one pick. He doesn't want Stroud. This team.
It doesn't matter who's playing in Houston. I believe they're backing up Bryce Young next year.
So on the flip side, this tells you probably all you need to know about the next question. But Ryan Tannehill flew down to Alabama, had ankle surgery, and is hoping to be available to play by week 18. Don't know if it'll matter by then. The Titans, we thought, with Derrick Henry alone, they'd at least be able to overcome the Texans. And Henry ran really well, 126 yards and a touchdown. Only got 23 carries, which is probably the most shocking. But they did have to let Willis throw 14 of 23, 99 yards and 2 interceptions. Did have 43 and a touchdown, 7 carries. The Tennessee Titans, now sitting at 7-8, are actually in second place in the AFC South and seem to be fading hard, preparing to head to Dallas. Can they even compete with Malik Willis back there against Dallas?
I don't think so. I mean, not this year. They may stumble into another win. We saw Dallas overlook Houston. And after this barn burner they had against the Eagles this week, and it wouldn't surprise me if they overlooked Tennessee and had the same kind of stumble they did against Houston. But Tennessee, I think somebody is taking the pencil writing on the wall and is starting to overwrite it with ink.
Yeah, and you definitely have to get the sense now that John Robinson firing was because they knew they were about to teeter off a cliff. On to San Francisco, where the 49ers got the 37-20 win over the Commanders to keep putting pressure on the Vikings for the number 2 seed. But for Washington, the dream is slowly fading. They're still currently the 7 seed, but they're barely hanging on. Taylor Heineke, who came in on the hot seat, 13 of 18, 166 yards, 2 TDs and an INT, got the hook for for Carson Wentz, who went 12 of 16, 123 yards, and a touchdown. They said they're going to make a decision by midweek, or Ron Rivera did. Would you go back to Carson Wentz, or would you stick with Heineke?
I mean, does it matter? Aren't they the same guy? I mean,
Carson Heineke, Taylor Wentz.
They're both prone to interceptions and getting injured while running. They both can make poor decisions, and they just, I don't know. There's weapons there. They just need a good. Honestly, I'd probably rather have Bailey Zappi at quarterback in Washington.
Why not give Howell a shot if you're?
I know, right?
If you're going there, why?
It's just I don't know that it matters if they stick with Wentz or if they stick with Heineke, or if they look at what's going on in Houston and they're like,
if they sit back and have a Heineken.
Let's go with 2 quarterback system.
Oh my God. Actually, I almost would pay to see that. All I know is they're playing Cleveland this week. They should be giving the running backs the ball and see, because that worked out. I mean, they didn't even have any professional receivers on the Saints team really during that game, and they still managed to get the win because they just pounded it with Hill and Kamara. I would think Robinson and Antonio Gibson could get it done.
You'd think.
On the flip side, are the 49ers perhaps the most dangerous team in the NFL right now?
They could be. I mean, that defense is so good. And we've seen teams hide mediocre quarterbacks and win Super Bowls. We saw Tampa do it. We saw Baltimore do it. And I'm not putting the San Francisco defense up there with the Ravens or the Buccaneers from that era. But that defense is really, really good. And Purdy has a stable of weapons. He clearly knows how to get the ball to George Kittle, and Kittle knows what to do with it. Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, where has that been all fantasy season, by the way?
Yeah, no kidding. Purdy only has been starting a couple of weeks, so that's where. But Brandon Ayuk, another good game. Christian McCaffrey, solid game, got in the end zone. It's a situation where they're not asking him to do a ton. And honestly, it looks like for all, I guess, the slander he got as a college prospect coming into the pros, there's something to be said for starting in college for 4 years. He's got a lot of experience starting. And while it's legitimate to say, yeah, but he just didn't progress season after season after season, I get that. That's a legitimate thing to point out. But you give him the right coaching. Maybe he's playing at his ceiling now. I don't know, but he's getting it done.
We'll head to Dallas, where the Cowboys managed the 40-34 victory over Gardner Minshew. Minshew didn't look bad, went 24-40, 355 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Eagles scored 34 points. We know Hurts is going to be the starter when he's ready, but he's got that AC joint issue in his throwing shoulder. They only need one more win to lock up home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Would they be better served just trying to get that win with Minshew and protecting Hurts for the playoffs?
Yeah, I think you got to kind of protect him from himself. I say roll Minshew out there next week, give the injury another week to get better. And if Minshew, let's see, do you know who they play next week off the top of your head?
Let me look it up real quick.
But
Minshew, that was the winnable game for them because they are the more winnable game. They have the Giants to close this season. Let me see. Their Week 17 opponent is the New Orleans Saints.
So they've got an opportunity to win it. I mean, the way Minshew played, but let's face it, he's just another version of Baker Mayfield. Starts out hot, fades, starts trying to do things he's just not capable of. But I mean, dude's got Devontae Smith and AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert, so that's quite a collection pass catchers there for him. So, yeah, if I'm Philly, I'm going to roll Minshew out there next week. Let Hurts get at least another week. And if Minshew doesn't pull it off next week, then, well, maybe you bring Hurts back against the Giants. But you definitely don't want to be in a situation where you're having to start Minshew in the playoffs.
And the Vikings may do him a favor and fall off as well. Because if the Vikings lose one more, that locks it up for Philly anyway. On Dallas' side, we saw them finally sign a receiver who was no longer playing, but it wasn't the receiver that we've been talking about for 2 months. They went and got T.Y. Hilton, and we didn't see a ton of him in this game, but he did have one pretty phenomenal 52-yard deep bomb. What kind of dimension does he bring to the Cowboys for the playoffs?
I don't know that he does anything different than Michael Gallup. He's just older.
Look, maybe old's what you need.
He's not gonna. I don't expect him to supplant Michael Gallup as the wide receiver 2. I don't expect him to supplant Noah Brown as the wide receiver 3. What Brown brings to the table, you're just not going to get from a 5'10", 180-pound 32-year-old or 33-year-old, whatever he is, T.Y. Hilton. I think Hilton is a situation where he's better for real football than he is for fantasy football. It's still CeeDee Lamb. It's still Dalton Schultz. It's Tony Pollard. It's Zeke Elliott. It's Michael Gallup. And 10, 12, 15 snaps a game, you're going to have T.Y. Hilton out there running 9 routes. And maybe Dak goes to him. Maybe he doesn't. But, I mean, he was on the field for 12 snaps this week, so had one target. He just happened to connect.
Sometimes one is all you need, Dennis.
That is correct, sir.
On to the evening game. It was the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, and the Steelers come away with the 13-10 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders. Dennis, the Raiders now 6-9, out of the playoff running. There's been a lot of rumblings at various points this season. Do you think Josh McDaniels, Derek Carr, both or neither end up leaving this offseason?
To me, it feels like McDaniel is safe, but it feels like Carr is on his way out. I think it's a situation where McDaniel will be able to pitch to Mark Davis. Look, man, you've had him here for how many years, and he just can't get over the hump. He's had several coaches, and he can't get over the hump. So it's clearly not the coaches. So let's get a new quarterback. I don't know what the options are going to be for the Raiders. You know, who knows? Maybe they go get Jameis Winston because the Raiders love the Mad Bombers, and that's what Jameis Winston does. But I think McDaniel's fine. I think that Carr is probably on his way out.
Yeah, it feels like a toss-up to me that they still have kind of a contract situation with Carr. Maybe they move on from him. I thought for sure McDaniels was gone in about the middle of the season. It seems like they've cooled on that. It also seems like I'm actually kind of leaning toward neither of them goes, because it seems like the Raiders have a cash flow issue.
Right.
That might prevent them from making any of these kind of moves. But they've looked okay at times. They've just looked – they can't put it all together, and they lose games that I don't understand. I guess I shouldn't feel bad for them because I'm not really a Raiders fan. But on the flip side, we have spent most of the year talking about how we thought this was going to be Mike Tomlin's first losing season. They do have 8 losses right now, but they also have 7 wins. They close in prime time. They got flexed to Sunday night against the Baltimore Ravens, and then they're home for the Cleveland Browns. What chances are you giving Mike Tomlin of keeping his streak alive?
About 57%. I mean, it's 2 tough matchups because they're in division. At Baltimore, if Lamar is back, that's going to be more challenging than if they had if Huntley's still under center. Versus the Browns, I feel like really the only thing that makes it something the Browns could compete. Is just that Deshaun Watson just keeps getting a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And they just happen to pull one out for whether it's, a last minute one, or they get up and Pickett gets rattled because of the pass rush or something. I don't know, but I feel pretty good about Tomlin being able to pull off the 9-8 record.
On to the Christmas Day games, and we started with an interesting one. The Green Bay Packers traveled to Miami and got the 26-20 win. Dennis, a couple of weeks ago, we kind of laughed Aaron Rodgers off when he said coming out of the bye, they just needed to win their last 4 games and they'd be in the playoffs. But so far, it's 2 for 2 with home games against the Vikings and the Lions to close the season. Are you starting to believe in that Aaron Rodgers magic?
I think it's a stretch to call it magic. I think it's more a function of the defense is playing pretty well. And then now we hear that Tua is in the concussion protocol. And there's a video clip going around of him slamming his head on the turf late in the second quarter. And then he played like shit the whole second half. And so potentially, while he didn't exhibit symptoms then, there's some talk that maybe, now that he's post-game, and he's there, like, well, maybe that's part of the reason that he played so poorly. But as far as the Packers go, they're gonna. I think they get Detroit, but Minnesota is going to be tough. As much as we talk about the Vikings kind of being paper tigers this year, they did win. Where are they at? 10 or 11 games?
12
games. So you don't do that by accident. So they've got good players, Hawkinson and Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. The defense is playing much better than last year. So I think that'll be a challenge for Green Bay. I feel like after this week with Detroit, I think next week, Detroit's going to get got by Green Bay.
Maybe. I actually think Green Bay comes back and clips the Vikings. But I guess I'm starting to believe in the magic a little bit more. I thought for sure Green Bay was going to lose to Miami. That was a shocking outcome. But you mentioned it a little bit. The Dolphins went 0 for December now, 8-7, barely hanging on to the playoffs. They went from being the top of the AFC East and a potential 1-seed candidate to, we may not make it out of the playoffs. 3rd concussion for Tua this season.
Yeah.
Should we have some grave concerns? I mean, he probably should get shut down. That would honestly explain a lot because you look at some of those. One of the plays he threw an interception. It looked like Mostert was on a different page and was like running a route that he wasn't expecting. But that also could be if your quarterback's having trouble clearing things up. But there was some really shockingly weird throws there. But if Tua gets shut down, are we out on the Dolphins?
I mean, yeah, they've got Teddy. All Teddy's got to do is get it to Hill and Waddle.
But they've got at the Patriots, home for the Jets, teams that actually have defense.
Teddy's game managed it to victories before, so
yeah,
it'll be a challenge.
It'll definitely be a challenge. The middle game of Christmas Day was not really a game. It's charitable to call it it would be charitable to call it even a sporting contest. The Los Angeles Rams get the 51-14 win over the Denver Broncos in a game that was both embarrassing for how the Broncos played on the field and how they conducted themselves off the field. We saw teammates fighting on the bench during the game. We saw Randy Gregory get into a fight with a Rams offensive lineman during the post-game press conference and get a suspension subsequently. And that was enough for the Walton Penner group to say Nathaniel Hackett, arrivederci. He got fired today, 4-11 in 15 games as the Broncos head coach. What does the team do now?
Well, the team looks like Edgar from Men in Black. Do you remember who Edgar was? It was the Vincent D'Onofrio character.
Ugly dude.
Where, when he would walk and he's all clunky and, that's just how they're playing. And nothing seems to fit together. They've come on a little bit lately with Judy, and Sutton has had a decent game, and Dulcich. There's a disconnect going on there, and whatever it is, I mean, Brett Rippon's getting ready to fight with the offensive linemen because they're not helping Russell Wilson up after they've let him get sacked. And I use the term let loosely. I mean, I recognize that the other team pays their players too, and they're probably much better at that job than I am. But they're just not rallying around Russ. And you see, guys like Minshew who create this hysteria, and Russ is like on the complete opposite end of that. And I don't know that I get it. Is he flying on a private jet to the games? Is he, not talking to, are people not allowed to look at him at practice? You can't look him in the eye or something. I don't know what's going on there with him, but I can't remember the last time that a supposedly good player was such a bad fit for the new team. It's been crazy.
I mean, if you watched both sideline videos when Brett Rippon went over to the offensive line, they got into a fist fight. When Russell Wilson walked over there a few minutes later, they all seemed happy to see him. So I think that characterization is way off base and has been for most of the season. I think their coaching is dreadful. I think the scheme has not been a very good fit for Wilson. He doesn't seem to be very comfortable back there. Denver has also led the league in injuries. There's something to be wondered about the training staff. We've had so many ACL injuries, so many games lost. They have had each of the 11 opening day starters, or people who would have, each of the 11 opening day starters, and even 12, if you go back to Tim Patrick, have all missed time this season. Something's not right. I also, honestly, I was not surprised they fired Hackett. I was gravely surprised that Greg Penner, who is the CEO, said he has every confidence in George Patton. He's alone on an island there, as far as I'm concerned, with having confidence in Patton, because Randy Gregory signing looks horrendous. The trade value that they gave away for Wilson and then signing him right away to that massive deal, those were not ownership group decisions. Those are your GM, and the roster that he's put together doesn't work. He continuously seems to sink and invest money way out in front in positions that are not panning out. He's made a couple of decent, Pat Surtain has been a great player for them, but he should have drafted Justin Fields. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. And so there's a lot of, the Minnesota Vikings have been demonstrably better record-wise since he left and came to Denver. I'm not enamored of this GM situation. I think Denver maybe has some more hard decisions to make. Be curious to see who they can attract as a coach. On the flip side, Baker Mayfield, 24 of 28, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. Looked like he was having a lot of fun. He's a free agent at the end of this season. Do you think he takes kind of a deal with a team like the Rams where he can continue to learn and grow, or do you think somebody offers him enough that he tries to take another shot starting for a middle-level team?
I think if he plays well these last 2 weeks, he's going to be in demand. And that being said, I don't think his ego would let him return to the Rams as the backup if he's got more than one team out there saying, hey, we want you to come and be our starter. I recognize not a lot has went right in his 4 years in the NFL for him. And he's probably every bit as polarizing as a player as Russell Wilson is. But I think he's going to be in demand. There's going to be several teams out there looking for a quarterback. I ran through them earlier. The Saints, the Texans, the Raiders potentially, Tampa Bay potentially, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Washington. There's going to be opportunities out there. That being said, if he does stay, if Matt Stafford's not a spring chicken, back injuries, he may stay for another year and say, yeah, I'll be the backup and be the heir apparent here because Sean McVay is a convincing guy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I like the option of him there in Los Angeles, and he seems like he's doing well. Seems like he's having fun. But we'll have to see how it ends up. On to our final game, the Sunday Christmas night game. A lot was made of the excitement of Tom Brady playing his first Christmas Day game. And you know what? A lot of that excitement stayed in the pregame. This was not an exciting game to watch. In fact, it was 6-6 through three quarters. Then we got a little bit of an offensive explosion there at the end. The Buccaneers managed to hold on for the 19-16 overtime win. Dennis, this should have been somewhat of a layup for a loaded Tampa Bay team going against Trace McSorley making his first NFL start for a Cardinals team out of the running. But it was anything but a layup. In fact, I don't know about you, but down the stretch, I actually thought Tampa Bay was going to lose this game. So does this win make you feel better or worse about the Buccaneers?
It's a confounding situation because there's a lot of things that Tom Brady can't do. But one thing Brady is he's good at making decisions on the field and getting the ball where it needs to be. And the interior of the offensive line, I know I harp on it week after week after week, and then they just lost their left tackle last night too. So that's not that offensive
so grim.
That offensive line situation is not going to get better. I don't, it feels like it may be a one and done season for Todd Bowles too.
Yeah, he is. Well, and Leftwich, who was arguably one of the hotter coordinators a couple of years ago, that the offenses look completely out of sync. They went from scoring 30 points a game Brady's first 2 years among the league best. They were second in the league in scoring last year, to their averaging less than 18 points a game coming into last night's game. I'm not sure their 19-point output is exactly going to light that scoring on fire. They look out of sync, and they are loaded with players. I know offensive line, obviously a weak spot. Brady looks like he gets frustrated and is having trouble making plays. They have looked better at the ends of some of these games when they've switched to the hurry-up offense. I wonder, part of me wonders if they shouldn't just stay in a hurry-up kind of offense and do some of these quick passing plays.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, at some point, you'd think that Bowles and Leftwich would look at each other and go, hey, let's do what works.
Spider-Man pointing at each other across the courtyard. On the other side, there was a lot of talk last night about the future of Arizona, a lot to be determined still about Cliff Kingsbury. We know Kyler Murray's injured and probably won't be available to start the season. There was a lot of discussion last night about whether the Cardinals should treat 2023 as a year where they try to turn over their salary cap issues, and that naturally leads to DeAndre Hopkins. Great player who hasn't had a lot of chances to compete deep in the playoffs. Thought he might have his fortunes change when he moved from the Texans to the Cardinals. Not getting any younger, but still capable of being an impact player. Is he somebody you think is going to want to try to move on this offseason?
I don't know if want to try to move on is how I would characterize it. But I do think that if a team like, let's say the Giants, who need an alpha number one, come knocking at the door and they're like, hey, we could really use a guy like you in here with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and Isaiah Hodgins and Wan'Dale Robinson. We overperformed our first year. You can see just how good our coaching situation is. It's not like what you got going on out there, and we'll feed you the ball. I could see him being interested in going somewhere that's a legitimate top tier contender for a title. I don't think Arizona is that close.
No, and I sort of agreed with them last night. I think Arizona probably would be best served to look at making a coaching change, look at moving on. You have a JJ Watt who he's only got a couple of years left. Do you try to shop him, a Hopkins to a contender? Maybe you hold on to Marquise Brown because he's a younger player. You just did a new contract. You're going to want to have weapons for Kyler Murray, but maybe a James Conner who's on a fairly cap-friendly deal for a decent running back, got a couple of years left, maybe some of the pieces on defense. I think Arizona is more than a year away from competing. I would be surprised if Kyler Murray is ready to go and looks like Kyler Murray before Thanksgiving, really, based on where he tore his ACL and what we've seen of those kind of ACL tears.
Yep.
Well, that'll do it for this week. We went a little bit longer, but you know what? There was a lot of games to discuss. Tonight's game is a barn burner. The Chargers going in to battle the Colts with a win. The Chargers will lock up their playoff spot. And you know what, Dennis? I think they get it.
Yeah, I think so. And as long as I get 27 points from Austin Eckler and Josh Palmer, I don't care how they do it.
Hopefully you'll just get the 27 points from Austin Eckler and you won't even have to sweat it out for Josh Palmer.
He's hit that number. It actually need 26. He's hit that in 7 of 14 games.
Well, you know what? Let's make it lucky number 8. If you have some time while you're not exactly excited watching Nick Foles try to move the ball for the Indianapolis Colts without Jonathan Taylor, Dennis, what can the people do during those free moments?
Reach out to us, ask us your fantasy football questions, then go give us a rate and review, subscribe to the podcast, download, listen, or don't, but subscribe, rate, review. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot.
I believe some combination of us will be back on Wednesday as we prepare for the big Thursday night football game, which I remember it being an important matchup, but it escapes me right now. Whatever it is, we will discuss it along with the outcome of tonight. And who knows, maybe by then 2 or 3 more teams will have fired coaches because that's just the way this season is going. Until then, it's what?
Cowboys Titans Thursday.
Wow. That's even worse for Malik Willis because there's no way he's getting it together to play against the Cowboys on a short weekend. It's in Dallas, I believe.
Yeah, I know. Tennessee.
I mean, that might be his only spot of good luck. But oof. All right. Well, we'll look forward to trying to make that seem exciting. Until then, enjoy the rest of this holiday interlude week.